started. Good morning, everyone. I will call to order the meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee for April 9th, and we'll start with the approval of the minutes from March 12th. So, Councilmember Jurinsky.
I approve.
Okay, I do too. So those will move forward. And our first item is the UDO amendment for multi-family parking. Is it Sarah that's going to present?
Good morning. Let me get my screen shared. All right. Good morning, committee members and attendees. My name is Sarah Weil, and I'm a senior planner in the Planning and Business Development Department. Thank you for the opportunity to give a presentation to the Planning and Economic Development Committee today. I'm going to give you an update on where we are at with updating the Unified Development Ordinance, which is the city's zoning code, to come into compliance with the state land use bills that were passed in 2024. In general, these bills attempt to improve new housing development by encouraging more attainable housing, allowing additional flexibility, and reducing roadblocks to new development. I will be presenting about the proposed changes to multifamily parking related to House Bill 24-1304. So House Bill 24-1304 prohibits cities from enacting or enforcing minimum parking requirements for multifamily developments in areas that are considered applicable transit service areas. This applies to new multifamily developments, mixed-use developments that contain multifamily, and the adaptive reuse of existing buildings that have at least 50% residential uses. The bill does not prohibit developers from including parking as part of their development, and there are no parking maximums proposed either. It simply prohibits the city from requiring a set number of parking spaces per unit as part of our regulations, so it adds flexibility for developers and property owners. This map shows the areas within the city that are considered applicable transit service areas, which are areas within 1/4 mile around bus and train stops and stations. Any multifamily proposed within the bubbled and hatched areas on the map would no longer have a minimum parking requirement after this amendment is approved. Most of the impacted areas will be in the western and central part of the city because that is where most of the transit is located. But there are a few areas in Southeast Aurora, along Smoky Hill Road, and a small segment along 56th Avenue and Piccadilly Road in Northeast Aurora that are served by transit, where this would apply to as well. We also have an interactive map available that will allow the public and developers to look closer at individual parcels to see if they are within these areas that will have more flexibility related to parking. Currently, the city's parking standards in the UDO do not comply with the bill. Our UDO requires off-street parking for all multifamily units for both residents and guests. Most multifamily developments are providing at least 1.2 parking spaces per unit, with many providing over 1.5 parking spaces per unit. As the graphic on the right illustrates, the more parking a development is required to provide, the less space it leaves for additional units and open space. It also makes the price of each unit more expensive to build and ultimately rent, which contributes to higher costs for developers and less affordable housing for residents. With the proposed change to parking requirements, we anticipate that most market rate developments will continue to provide around the same number of parking spaces as they currently are, while affordable housing developments may provide a bit less than they are required to now. Ultimately, financing requirements and market studies will still dictate how much parking is included based on discussions we've had with developers in the Parking Roundtable Forum. So we're currently working on updating the language in the UDO to reflect that there would be no minimum parking requirement for multifamily units that are within an applicable transit service area. Multifamily outside of transit areas and all other uses within the city would maintain current parking requirements. We will also require some additional bicycle parking spaces within these areas, and any off-street parking that is voluntarily provided will be required to provide accessible parking in accordance with ADA standards and also meet parking design standards. Our overall goal with this amendment is to increase flexibility for the development community by letting them determine what the parking needs are for their buildings, as opposed to the city mandating a specific requirement like we are right now. A draft of the proposed changes will be posted for public review on Engage Aurora by the end of April. So the main things to know at this point is we're currently working with many stakeholder groups, including the Joint Task Force, Development Review Advisory Board, Aurora Housing Authority, Park Aurora, and others, working through a draft of the code changes to the parking section of the UDO, both internally and with DOLA. And we also launched a site on Engage Aurora to provide information to the public on these changes. Our goal is to have the amendment approved by the end of June. I appreciate your time this morning, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, I do. I know that many of the jurisdictions and municipalities are looking to sue the state on this particular issue, as it is an overreach of our local home rule authority. And I have a real concern that we no longer can mandate the minimum parking. As you know, whenever we have multi-housing units put in the city, the number one issue that comes up with residents is traffic and parking. And usually the residents are complaining that there are not enough parking spaces. And that's where currently with the 1.2 to 1.5 per unit. So it's going to be a big issue. I think what we're going to end up doing probably is just limiting multi-housing, period, in the city of Aurora. If that's how we have to fight back. I just, personal opinion, it's terrible overreach by our state legislators. That's it. So we'll move on to 3B UDO amendment for ADUs. Oh, one question. It does say in the backup of the actual legislation that we have to submit that report. And if it's found to not be satisfactory, then they send it back to us, and then we have an opportunity to fix any issues that they had. So that's the report that you're submitting to the legislature?
It would, Councilmember Bergan.
Or not the legislature, but whatever department.
Yeah, Councilmember Bergan, Janine Rustad, Director of Planning and Business Development. Yes, I believe that is a report showing compliance.
Okay, and are we going to ask for any exceptions in there, or we just submit the report as,
we have drafted, a UDO amendment that would be in compliance with the legislation. And again, as Sarah Weil pointed out, we did do a developer roundtable last fall on parking. And what they stated is, essentially, it doesn't matter what we do with our code. In order for them to get their financing, they essentially need to provide what our code already requires. So we are not anticipating a lot of a change. The only exception would be affordable housing. And the example they gave us was that, with a new building fully occupied, they had 4 cars in the lot.
Okay, so the developers could still put in whatever parking they deem to be necessary.
Absolutely, and that's what was different about this bill from 2 years ago. There are no penalties for providing parking.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll go ahead and move on to the ADUs.
Wait, Chair Bergan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So if this really has no impact on how builders, can put together their site plans and include parking, what is the need for this legislation?
To be clear, we don't anticipate, based on what they're saying, the legislatures, maybe in Denver, this would have more of an impact where they have more frequent transit. It may change over time if we get more frequent transit out here.
Well, I think that, one of our fight backs on this should be that then the Denver City Council should be legislating this and should be potentially looking at a bill or an ordinance specifically for their city rather than putting this on the whole state, especially if it as of right now doesn't affect how we do development with regards to parking on site plans. But I actually want to double down and agree with Chair Bergan that if this passes, whether or not they're trying to have an effect on Denver, I would like to seek to end density building altogether in Aurora personally. So I think that we should let that be known that may be the direction that we go as a whole in Aurora.
Okay. All right. All right, let's move on to the next item.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Jeremiah Fettig, a planner in the Planning and Business Development Department. So thank you for the opportunity to present to this committee this morning. I'll be presenting on the proposed amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance for accessory dwelling units related to House Bill 24-1152. So this project is to update the Unified Development Ordinance, or the UDO, and it was necessitated by the passage of state legislation pertaining to accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. So House Bill 24-1152 requires subject jurisdictions across Colorado to permit ADUs on all lots where single-family detached units are permitted. A general overview includes using an administrative approval process, allowing for ADUs between 500 and 750 square feet. We generally cannot restrict design and dimensional standards beyond what we would otherwise require for single-family detached dwellings. Additionally, homeowner associations may not adopt or enforce previously adopted covenants that restrict the creation of an ADU that complies with the legislative requirements. So subject jurisdictions are all municipalities with a population of 1,000 residents or more, and they are within a metropolitan planning organization.
Can I ask a question before you move to the next slide? So I was talking to our attorney this morning about the last bullet, because in the actual bill, it never mentions metro districts nor homeowner associations. In fact, it lists local government means a municipality, county, or tribal nation. And I know that I have spoken to one of the legislators last year who said that HOAs have whatever, I don't know the legal term, but it's basically they have powers in their property rights. And so I don't particularly think we should even have that in our presentation, because that's going to be fought. And there are people that pay dues to HOAs to live in a place that has covenants, that has restrictions, has architectural design that meet the standards that they decided to move into that neighborhood for. And again, overreach by the state legislatures on, having these requirements without even having an understanding of how neighborhoods are formed in our state. So I think that's going to be fought.
We can take that out of previous presentations. I know you've also had conversations with Lena McClellan, our land use attorney, that we cannot opine legally, give a legal opinion, especially me. I'm not a practicing on that will be something for the HOAs to fight.
Correct. So I think just we shouldn't opine one way or the other. That's why I just don't think we should have it in the presentation.
Yeah, no, thank you for that comment. We will remove that from future presentations. Thanks. So the bill provides a definition for ADUs. It includes 3 different types. So we have what classify as maybe a basement finish, a basement conversion, so it's located within the primary dwelling. Then we have attached, so it can be attached to the front, side, or rear of the primary dwelling. And then the typical or more commonly viewed detached accessory structure. So located in the rear yard, these can be accessory structure conversions, garage conversions, and that type. Additionally, the definition that's included in the legislation goes on to include an ADU provides complete independent living facilities for one or more individuals. is located on the same lot as a proposed or existing primary dwelling. It includes facilities for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So the expansion of ADUs furthers the vision and goals of the Aurora Places Comprehensive Plan. So one of the 7 principles is housing for all, and the strategy of that principle is to allow for ADUs in Aurora. The bill cites benefits to allowing ADUs include the construction of smaller and relatively more affordable units in areas where utilities and infrastructure are already available. That can promote and increase housing options for smaller households, lower income households, and the elderly wishing to age in their neighborhoods. So ADUs can additionally encourage multi-generational housing that can be used to generate supplementary income, and the construction of an ADU can increase property values.
I'm sorry to interrupt. One of our members, Brad Pierce, says that he cannot see the screen. I mean, I can see it. Would there
I
be
also haven't been able to see it.
Oh, okay. How do we fix that?
I will stop sharing and reshare, see if that solves it.
Reshare? Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Can you ask if they can, or
Yeah.
Councilmember Jurinsky, can you see it now?
I cannot.
Oh,
That is, because I am seeing it.
I know, me too. That's really strange.
Let's see.
Huh.
We can try it one other way. One sec.
We do have the presentation.
I can see it now.
Oh,
Oh.
weird.
Yeah.
It's a small screen.
Yep,
There you go.
I'll get it
Yeah,
bigger.
now I can see it.
There.
Yeah,
Ah,
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so what type of local ADU regulations are still allowed? So examples of what we may regulate include allowing more than 1 ADU per lot, permitting the use of an ADU for short-term rental, allowing ADUs smaller than 500 square feet or larger than 750 square feet. We can also limit that the ADU be no larger than the size of the primary dwelling. We can include or exclude the use of motorhomes, RVs, or multi-purpose trailers for the use of an ADU. We can require the designation of an existing parking space on the lot for the use of the ADU, and we can require compliance with adopted building, life safety, and utility codes. So what types of regulations are not allowed? The city may not require the single-family dwelling or ADU to be owner-occupied. We cannot require additional off-street parking. We cannot apply restrictive or subjective architecture or landscape standards. We cannot require a larger lot than what would otherwise be required for the single-family detached dwelling. We cannot require larger side setbacks for the ADU than what would be required for the primary dwelling, or the rear setbacks greater than 5 feet. Additionally, we cannot exclude any of the 3 different ADU types from the definition in the legislation. So ADUs have been permitted in the city since 2018, though they are allowed. They're pretty restrictive. They're permitted in 3 zone districts, specifically in Original Aurora. They require a conditional use permit with a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. So with that being said, the existing administrative building permit process is in conformance with state legislation. So if we omit the public hearing process, then our standard building permit process is in compliance with that legislation. Our use-specific standards are more restrictive. We only allow detached ADUs located in the rear yard. Our size allowance is smaller than what is otherwise allowed in the legislation, and the lots need to be alley accessed. So what are we doing with the proposed amendments? Staff is working to align the code with the legislative requirements, including changes to the permitted use table, removing that conditional use requirement, expanding, the zone districts where ADUs would be permitted. Additionally, we are removing subjective and restrictive standards from the use-specific standards section of the UDO. We're defining the number of ADUs allowed, and we're developing parameters meeting the legislation for the 3 different types that are also, Aurora specific within the leeway that we're granted in the legislation. And then our definition currently does not provide for all 3 ADU types, so we'll be updating that to meet the legislative intent. So a draft of the proposed code changes will be published to Engage Aurora by the end of April for review by the public. Just Sarah highlighted some of these points, but we have launched a website with some frequently asked questions, some links to additional information and the like for both UDO amendment projects on Engage Aurora. So that was launched this week. We've been meeting with stakeholder groups internally and externally, different departments within the city. We have a technical advisory committee that we're meeting with representation from fire, life safety, building, engineering, and the like. We also anticipate holding study sessions before both Planning Commission and City Council, and then public hearings with both of the same Planning Commission and Council as we move through the process. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm muted. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't.
Okay, I'll just go on my bandwagon again. Very disappointed that the legislature last year passed this, considering the fact that we actually allowed it in our city. So again, taking away our local home rule authority to even have any kind of consideration as to how we want our city to look. So again, I hope this is going to be fought by different jurisdictions. And we'll move on to 3C, Colfax and 13th Avenue.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Daniel Kurzanowski. I'm a supervisor with the city's planning department. Give me just a moment to pull up a screen here. I hope you can all see that.
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. This item is on the Colfax and 13th Avenue Station Area Plan update. This has been a project that we had originally briefed the committee on in late 2023 and are coming back at this point with a completed draft and a request to move forward for adoption of the plan. The area that we're talking about is about 187 acres located in sort of north central Aurora along Colfax Avenue. The area contains both the Colfax Avenue Station, which is that iconic bridge over Colfax near Anschutz, as well as the 13th Avenue Station, which is located a little bit south of Colfax on the east side of 225. This area is adjacent to 2 sort of major hospital employers, obviously the Anschutz Medical Campus, also the Health One Behavioral Health Center on 6th Avenue, and is located between several existing neighborhoods, including Hoffman Heights, Chambers Heights, and the Meadows mobile home community. The purpose for updating this plan is really twofold. First, the original plan that was done was completed in 2009. This predated the light rail station location. It's now 15 years old. It doesn't really reflect the development that's been going on in this area since then. It also doesn't reflect some of the planning and policies and zoning ordinance that have been adopted since then. The second reason is to take advantage of some near-term development opportunities in the area. This plan is really intended to be updated as a precursor to an urban renewal plan, which would provide necessary infrastructure to take advantage of this near-term housing development and look towards further development and investment in the area. The plan itself is updated in a few ways. The first is that it really reaffirms the vision for this area as a mixed-use, transit-oriented community. This is not different from the 2009 plan. It's just really intended to reaffirm that and provide better tools, more effective and streamlined zoning and development standards towards reaching that intended vision. It also identifies a series of recommended action items to implement the vision and plan, and then, as I mentioned, serve as a foundation for an updated urban renewal plan, which will provide some of the necessary infrastructure to activate development opportunities in the area. The plan itself is built around sort of two frameworks. The first is the land use framework, which you can see on the screen. To summarize it, the area along Colfax is continued to be envisioned as sort of a commercial mixed-use area that serves employees, residents, and visitors with the shopping, dining services that are needed by those different groups. The areas sort of south off of Colfax include both some existing neighborhoods, including the Meadows mobile home community, but also those two potential development sites at 13th Avenue Station and south of Tollgate Creek. These are intended for a mix of residential development. And as you'll see, adjacent to the 13th Avenue Station, there may be a possibility to provide some additional recreational amenity, perhaps a new park or something of that nature that can serve both existing neighborhoods as well as new development and new residents in the area. The other sort of foundational element of the plan is the mobility network. As you can see on the screen here, it shows some future street and/or pedestrian connections that really are intended to better connect these areas to each other and to the shopping, dining, and transit services along Colfax Avenue. I think the one that is sort of most imminent is the extension of Dillon Way from south of Tollgate Creek up to 13th Avenue. Touching on basically the two near-term development sites and providing the necessary access for both public safety reasons and the access of future residents to these areas. But as you can see, the plan intends sort of an incremental and opportunistic sort of restitching together of these areas through some future roads or pedestrian connections so that people can move from the neighborhoods to the services on Colfax and transit on Colfax and vice versa. Like I mentioned, this is a sort of a final draft plan. This is something that staff is recommending to move forward for adoption. If it is the direction of this committee, this is a schedule of that adoption process. The next step would be planning a zoning public hearing on April 23rd, and then we would bring it forward to City Council in early June. This would really complete this sort of station area planning portion of this and will allow the urban renewal plan process to continue into the summer. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions or provide further clarification.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Any questions, Councilmember Jurinsky?
Yeah, thank you. What is there a fiscal note attached to this?
There is not. This would be an adoption of the plan and the plan only. Any infrastructure investments, any future studies would come back to council for funding with that specific fiscal note. This is really kind of setting the course, but all the individual, whether it's a street improvement or that type of thing, would come back to council.
And what does the partnership look like with RTD? Are we in talks with them with this? Are they willing to do anything? Because a part of the low ridership is because their transit system is not safe. So we can build big, beautiful parks and do all of these things, but what is their you know, what's their dog in the fight here?
We have been in contact with RTD throughout this process. They are supportive of this plan and this project. They're supportive of continuing to develop around their stations. In fact, they have from their board some policy direction to identify and pursue opportunities to see further development at some of these stations that maybe have excess parking or excess land. And so it's really kind of a coincidence of their policy towards that, but also the city's interest in continuing to see development and investment in the 225 corridor. So they have been part of this. They will continue to be a part of this. So I hope that sort of answers their role.
If I can add on to that, Councilmember Jurinsky, we have quarterly meetings with RTD, and we will be getting into more finer grain detail on this site specifically. And we were successful at one point. They had recommended a bus barn here, so we were successful in getting them to agree that that is not the highest and best use for this property.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you'll just kind of keep us posted on that and what their buy-in on this is going to be, I would just like to know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And at TAPS, I believe, I can't remember if it's this month or next month, we are partnering with them on a presentation on what they are doing to get fully staffed up and make their transit more reliable.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Daniel. Next is our housing small lot update.
Janine Rustad, the Director of Planning and Business Development. I am happy to inform you that we had 3 very excellent proposals to our RFP to do a deep dive into the code, and we have selected one. I'm going to refrain from naming them because we need to get through the contracting, which we expect to have done in the next couple of weeks. But it's a very solid proposal with getting us through adoption by starting the process November, December, and getting us done in January. I know this may seem like it takes a long time, but we are making sure we have constant engagement with the development community because they are our experts. They're the ones who are building, know what are selling. We also want to make sure, and Councilmember Bergan, you nailed it when you said on item 3B, how we want our city to look. So we're making sure we're balancing this need for more attainable housing with making sure we're still a beautiful city and a place where people want to live, work, and play. So we'll have engagement with the developers, but also educating the public as we go along, because while we are already very aggressive in our code with small lots, this is going to increase their use. And I was just many of us were just at the national, or a few, I shouldn't say many, at the National Planning Conference that was held here in Denver. And they had a session on what different jurisdictions have done to increase small lots, seeing the need for what is called the missing middle. And Inglewood had some very important lessons about bringing the public along. Now, their process took 3 years. We are not going to take that long. We are going to get this done in months. But because they had a lot of resistance in their community, it resulted in recall efforts on 4 council members. They were unsuccessful, and a referendum on the ballot. So we want to make sure we have enough dialogue and people understand, not just by code words, that's boring, but by visuals. So our consultant will help us with that, doing some design briefs and these visualizations. And they have also, what really impressed us during their interview, they also noted the need to balance the cost of housing and the incremental that different changes can make with the cost of sacrificing a livable community. So we really, that is utmost importance to us, striking that balance. So we will continue to brief you as this moves forward, and we look forward to this project and working with our community.
Okay, thank you, Janine. So when do they start their? I know you have to wait for the contract, but
We are, either end of April, beginning of May for that initial kickoff meeting if we have to refine anything in the scope, starting the tours to show them what development looks like, and they will dive into the code audit.
Okay, great. I particularly like the engagement with residents, with the community, because I think, in a lot of these kind of decisions at this level, if they're not included, we find out on the other end. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Oh,
Absolutely.
Councilmember Jurinsky, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions?
No, I was just gonna say, I agree that that's one of the most important things. I still owned a bar in Inglewood when this happened, and the entire city went up in arms, and they did push to recall 4 city council members over it.
Wow. Okay, well, we don't want that to happen, so.
So
Thank
we
you,
will
Jenny.
keep you updated, and if we hit any bumps in the road, you'll be the first to know.
Sounds good. Okay, next we have the resolution for, it's the Crestone Park Resource Operator Agreement. And I think we have Dan.
Morning. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Bergan, Councilmember Jurinsky, and staff. I'm Jeffrey Moore, Manager of the Energy and Environment Division. Let me share my slides, make sure that you can see those. I have 2 slides to share for some context and background, and then I will introduce Mr. Dan Harrington. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Very good. So considering these proposed revisions to Exhibits A and B of the Crestone Peak Resources Operator Agreement, Exhibits A and B are the list of wells and the maps that are associated with those wells in the Operator Agreement. The Operator Agreement does allow revisions to those well sites and new wells, the numbers and locations, after a public hearing at City Council. Previous revisions were approved by City Council in January of 2021 and January of 2023. Crestone is requesting 3 things in this update. First is the cancellation of a previously approved well site, which was less than 2,000 feet from 2 residences and zoned residential R2. A reduction in the total number of wells and well sites in the city, and the addition of 6 wells to the Reserve North well site. That is an existing already producing well site that has 9 wells, and they're requesting to move from 9 wells to 15 wells. Our division has fully reviewed these requests. There are some benefits to the city if this request is approved. First was reduced impact to residents by canceling that one site that was less than 2,000 feet from the 2 residences. Second is reduced surface impacts by removing an approved site that could have been drilled in the future, but now will not be. Reduced traffic and road impacts because the expanded site is very close to I-70, whereas the site that's being canceled was about 3 miles of city roads moving toward I-70. And the expanded site is zoned airport district, so it's a better district, a better zoning than the residential. We do note that additional wells will still have to go through a new permitting process with the city and the state, so that's still required. We do believe that these can be accomplished and provide greater protection of public health, safety, welfare for the environment and wildlife resources. And then just yesterday, we met with the Oil and Gas Advisory Committee, and we do have a letter of support from them for these changes. We did not have time to add that to the agenda for this meeting, but it would be added for council if it's moved forward. We are fully supportive of these changes, and if you agree, we'd recommend moving them forward to study session on April 21st. And with that, I'll now introduce Mr. Dan Harrington. He's the Asset Development Manager with Civitas Resources, and he'll walk through some of the details here on this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, and thank you, council members and staff for allowing us to present this proposal. So we are proposing a modification to Exhibits A and B of the operator agreement. If we go to the next, probably skip a couple slides here. This is just an agenda. The upshot is we would like to add additional well slots to the existing built Reserve North pad site. We'll show that where that is in a moment, but it's a bit north of I-70. And in lieu, we will forego the vested rights to the Cottonwood Creek site with its 7 well slots. Again, we're proposing modifications only to Exhibits A or B. As Mr. Moore said, the OA is built to be flexible in Exhibits A and B, but we don't intend to touch any contractual language in the operator agreement itself. And if you net out the changes, this will lead to one fewer site and one fewer overall wells in the operator agreement. And we also think the consolidation makes a lot of sense from a surface use standpoint that we'll go over here in a moment. Next slide, please. Here's the red stars are the sites being proposed. You can see the Reserve North site just north of I-70 along Hudson Road. Again, that's already built. And then we have the Cottonwood Creek North site a bit far to the south along Jewel Avenue. That's the site we're proposing to eliminate. That site has not been built. That would be fresh ground. Next slide, please. So I'm showing here essentially a red line of what the Exhibit B changes would be. Again, the Reserve North, we'd ask to increase the number of planned wells from 9, which are already there, to 15, and we'd add a phase 3 of construction and drilling to that site. The advantages here, this would allow us to develop the subsurface essentially to the east of the reserve site. We looked for surface locations in there. They'd be along Colfax Avenue near the post office there. There are very few between various surface conflicts, including residences, floodplains, no really good pad sites over there. Whereas we have a already built site just across the road at Reserve, much better plan. The other advantage here is the way the Reserve North site is currently built. There is a gap between the two sets of wells where we'll be able to fit most, if not all, of the new wells. So at the end of the day, the Reserve North will not grow geometrically much larger than it is right now. Next slide, please. And the site we're proposing to eliminate is the Cottonwood Creek North, just south of Jewel Avenue. That site is within 1,400 feet of 2 residences and would increase traffic on Jewel Avenue, which we know is a point of concern with those community members as well as the city. So that it's a good candidate for elimination. Next slide, please. This would be the revised Exhibit A. The only difference here is the absence of the Cottonwood Creek pad box as marked in red there. And next slide, please. So the final Exhibit B modified slides would look like this. And if we go to the next slide, that is it. Appreciate the time, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Dan and Jeffrey. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, and I'm supportive.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think it's a good decision to remove the one by Jewel that's closer to residents, and especially the fact that up north you said the gap, so it would be between those the existing well pads. So I think it's a good plan, and I am also in support.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and that is it for our presentations. Miscellaneous matters. I don't. You have the oil and gas, of course, letter in the backup, and I don't see any additional reports. Are there any organizations that wanted to give a brief report or an update, or are we all good?
Councilmember Bergan?
Yes.
I just have a couple of quick updates. We are running right now our Cheers Aurora beer program through June 15th, and it's a reminder to support your local breweries. You can go onto our website to see all the information. Also, we are getting ready to announce the 2025 Aurora Borealis Festival. This year, it will be located at Painted Prairie, High Prairie Park, October 10th and 11th. A press release should come out in the next couple of weeks with the full announcement. And thank you.
All right, thank you. That's exciting. All right, anything else from anybody else? Okay, I think that's it for our meeting, and I thank you all for being here. Have a great afternoon.